There is blind justice, and then there is trading justice, so that you can finally afford to get that laser eye surgery. Not only will people find you more attractive once you ditch those old glasses, you'll be able to see your charts better. That's what we call win-win. Speaking of winning, it's time for a little trading justice. Brought to you by TackleTrading.com.
Okay, welcome out everybody, and hello from Trading Justice Land, from Podcast Land, from out here in the cyberspace. I don't know, the digital era. We're all over the place. I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah. This is your host, Coach T, Tim Justice, from TackleTrading.com and Trading Justice. We have a very special guest today. His name is Richard Do. Richard is a student of market education. He is a football fan. He works in the oil industry. I actually got to meet Richard here recently. He's very sharply dressed, and I really enjoyed getting to know him. He's been a member of our tackle trading community for a long time. He's taken the Theta Fate classes, been a pro member. He participates in the clubhouse. All around, exactly what we want on our team. Richard, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, Tim. How are you?
I'm doing great. I just sitting here messing around with a PowerPoint that I got to finish. I got to tell you, when I was in college, I had no idea that I should have taken PowerPoint classes probably for like 2 years in a row because I use them. Holy cow.
It's like all the Office apps and everything, and Excel especially. I use Excel so much.
Excel, PowerPoint, all the tools. And Microsoft is simply taking over the world right now. It is what it is. And they're just becoming more ingrained. It's an example of companies in the modern economy like Apple and Microsoft, and Salesforce is trying to do it. These cloud-based companies that also produce products. I mean, if you think about Apple's products, they have their core products, but then it's all about everybody else that uses them. Every app that works on iPhone and Android and all that, you get plugged into iTunes. My podcast, it has to go through iTunes, right? Same thing with Microsoft. They swarm you from every direction.
Yeah, definitely. It's that social aspect too, and can't forget about Google. They pretty much started with the search engine, and then going into the mail, and they're in the telephones and hangouts and whatever you can think of, they're in.
Sure. Yeah. Do you remember what was the first search that you remember? I remember AOL.
AOL. I used Alta Vista when I was coming up.
Vista. Yeah. I remember the old thing was that when you bought a computer, they'd give you the AOL disc, and you'd have to, DVD disc or whatever it is, and you had to. It wasn't a DVD. It was CD-ROM, and then you had to
install. Little CD that they give you.
Install the CD-ROM on your computer, and then you pay for AOL and get an AOL email. Every now and then, because I do enough email, every now and then I'll still see an AOL email. From way back in the day. People have held on. Yeah. It's funny. I remember I had my first email was a Yahoo email, and I hadn't been in there in years until a couple years ago. I kind of abandoned it, and I went in there, and there was so much spam. It was unbelievable that people were still sending me stuff.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, the thing with AOL, they had AOL Instant Messenger. I was on that all the time, chatting with my friends. And you see that they still have 21 some million subscribers still.
Oh, is that right? I had no idea.
Yeah. There's a lot of people still on dial-up. I was so surprised when I saw that.
Where are these people hiding in the backwoods of Alaska or something?
It's gotta be. Or in the mountains of Utah, huh?
Possibly. I can think of a few people that may still be on their AOL. I wonder with stuff like that, if you went to their house and you could sit them down and be like, listen, there's a better way, if they'd be willing to change. Are they just afraid of trying something new, and they're comfortable with what they got?
Yeah, I mean, who knows? They probably just don't know that something's better is out there.
Yeah, maybe. My dad was like that with his flip phone for the longest time. He just recently got a phone that can take pictures. He got a smartphone. It wasn't even a new one. It was an older one, but it took him years. He had that flip phone forever. I know a couple of guys that are going back to the old flip phones. It's kind of, I don't know if it's a hipster thing or if it's a revolt against technology or whatever it is. Some people don't like those smartphones.
Yeah, maybe. It's probably the privacy thing. They with all the spying going on, and the government getting all these companies to build back doors into their software, and it's kind of scary, actually.
Well, we know about that here. We know that right here. I live in Salt Lake County, And Salt Lake County is a pretty big area. I mean, it's not a huge city. It's a, you know, when you travel, and if you're somebody who goes around, you go to Detroit or Chicago or Houston or LA or whatever, you realize how massive some of these cities are. Salt Lake's a mid-sized little town, you know, nestled up in the mountains. But in the valley, down to the very south end of the valley, there's a little town called Draper. And in Draper, the NSA built the largest facility to store data in the entire country. And it is scary. I remember when they first did it, one of the local news affiliates had, you know, those little news helicopters they got? They were flying around the facility trying to take some shots, and I think some Air Force pilots came and ushered them down.
Wow. Holy cow.
It was, or something like that, yeah.
No,
you don't mess with the NSA. It's scary when you think about that. I mean, how much of our information is being stored?
I couldn't imagine. You know, I think they still have, you know, all of our cell phone records somewhere.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the things, though, like with that Boston bombing. I remember when those two or three guys, when they had those bags full of homemade explosives and they blew up the finish line, and that tragedy that was in Boston a couple of years ago, they actually used those telephone records and cell phone records. They went back and found all of their text messages. They retraced it. It's pretty incredible when it's used for the right reason. But what's scary, especially if you're a libertarian, is you know that governments, when they take power, they usually keep it, and they will use it for the wrong reasons.
They'll do everything they can to keep that power. They won't give it up very easily.
Well, isn't that the whole thing with Snowden? Like, is it Eric Snowden? Eric Snowden? Like, his thing is that he was the whistleblower. By the way, Obama, if there's one thing that really upsets me about Obama, and there's probably many, everybody thinks I'm this big lefty, and I am in some regards, not always though, is that Obama said that we will not punish whistleblowers, except for when you blow the whistle on the government. Okay. And that whole inconsistency with Snowden.
That is pretty terrible that they're treating him like a criminal.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and there's that whole thing, because you're pretty tech savvy, right, Richard? Explain to me what the dark side of the web is. The, I guess, the onion router and all that kind of stuff, because that's where Snowden got that information out, right?
I mean, it's you know, one of those encrypted networks where you know, you have a key on your end, and basically a public key you distribute, that's out there, and then you kind of, it's all encrypted, so if you try to hack it or break into it, it's very difficult, and that's a lot of the things that they use. You know, it kind of reminds me. Have you seen the show Person of Interest? It's on CBS. It actually aired before this whole Snowden revelation came out, and it was this guy. Do you know what's his name? He was on Lost. He played Ben Linus. Michael Emerson, right?
He was the guy, like the English guy, right?
I can't remember, but he built this machine that spies on all Americans all over the nation, and it can detect terrorism when it happens, before it happens, and it tries to stop it, but it also detects, you know, violent acts of crime, and so it's basically a vigilante story where he gets a social security number, and he has to figure out whether they're good or bad, and then goes after that person to either save them or stop them from doing the crime that they're trying to do. It's a really cool show, and the craziest thing, it came out before before Snowden was releasing all that information, and then so whenever it came out, it was like, holy cow, this is actually happening. You know, it blew my mind when that story broke.
Yeah, that does. It is. I mean, it's been the basis of many science fiction movies and films and writings and books and authors. They've talked about the idea of technology, you know, performing in a way that it could help predict and prevent and even go after criminals, right? I mean, that's the idea behind the Patriot Act. From somebody who studied politics coming up, you know, through college and whatnot, always been somebody who's a thinker that way. It does scare the heck out of me, though, because you think back to like 1984. I mean, the subterfuge that the government does during times of fear and panic, and this actually does apply to the markets as well, because it's what the Federal Reserve did in 2009 with quantitative easing. When people are nervous, they give up things, and you don't get them back.
That's true.
You know? I mean, you don't get them back. You give them up and you lose them.
So true.
Oh goodness, Richard. We'll get into trading at some point, I'm sure, but I don't. I actually, this is this is kind of stuff I love talking about, though. Your journey's interesting. You live in Houston right now. That's where I happen to meet
No,
you,
that's
but you're
right.
not from Houston, are you? How did you arrive in the
Oh,
great
let's
state of
see.
Texas?
I started in Illinois. I was born and raised in a tiny town called Robinson, Illinois. It's like 7,000 people. It's a very tight knit community. I went to school in Indiana. It's a little engineering college called Rose-Hulman. Great school, but it was a small school. And then after Indiana, I went to Louisiana. I worked for the company that I work for right now. It's my first job was in Louisiana. They're an oil refinery in Louisiana. And then after a couple of years, I got, I guess, tired of it or something. But there was a new project in Detroit, so I went from Louisiana to Detroit for the same company, and then for a project. So I was on the project for 3 years. We were finishing up, and then a new project came along, and that happened to be based in Houston. And so that's how I ended up in Houston. And Houston's been great so far. I've been here since June of 2014, and I've loved it ever since.
Wow, yeah. Houston is one of those cities that people. By the way, I get students from all over the country coming to my great state of Utah as well, and so I've gotten to meet a lot of people from a lot of backgrounds and kind of get a flair for the regionality and the pride. Houston and Texas in general seems to be one of those states, and it's pretty famous for this, that there's a lot of Texas pride. How have you gotten along with the people that are now your neighbors and your colleagues that are from the great state of
Texas has
Texas?
been awesome. They've been so welcoming and friendly. I guess the only bad part is the traffic in Houston. Like I don't know if you've seen any of the stories, but in some of the like rush hour times, I think there was a story a couple weeks back where someone got so mad at someone cutting them off that they pulled out a gun and shot at them. I was like, it's that, but that's about the worst
Holy
that I've
cow.
seen. But everybody in Texas owns a gun. That's kind of part of living in Texas, right? If you move to Texas, you got to own one. But I mean, but other than Texas has been great.
Yeah,
They've been more than welcoming.
I got to tell you, I think that that's very similar to here in Utah. I can't tell you the number of times I've seen an open carry just out and about, in places that you
Yeah,
don't normally expect it. Grocery store, they have a concealed carry, but they actually can open carry sometimes in certain situations. I don't know the
yeah,
exact rules on it. But there was a one situation here where, quite frankly, it's pretty incredible when you think about it. Now, I know there's a big discussion about guns in this country, and we could get into that. I'd be happy to.
yeah.
I have
Yeah.
opinions about it. But what's interesting about it is that there was this guy that walked into a grocery store. I'd have to look up the clip. I wish we had our YouTube plugin. I figured out that we could actually run YouTube videos through our system. Phil, I want you to
Yeah,
look into
that's
that, the
awesome.
YouTube plugin. But there's this guy in downtown Salt Lake at a grocery store that I've gone to probably 50 times. And he walked in there, and he was Native American, and I actually recognized the guy on the video. Never talked to the guy, didn't know him, but he was a homeless guy in downtown Salt Lake. And when you work downtown Salt Lake, you happen to see some of the same guys and girls over and over and over and over again. And I knew this guy. He walked in, he pulled out a knife, and he started like screaming, getting all crazy. And like, you stole our land, you killed our people. He's just like going off and off and off and off. And there were
Man,
like three guys that pulled concealed weapons out, and got the guy calmed down. I don't even think they shot him. Got the guy calmed down, put the knife down, got the guy arrested. In Utah, you can expect that there's guns around you at all times. I mean, if you go into a public place, there are guys carrying. That is just the expectation.
yeah, and you know what? I don't have a problem with that because they have to have a permit, they have to get training, and they have to have all these checks, and so there's really that's fine as long as it's somebody who's responsible about it.
Yeah, I definitely am a believer in the Second Amendment. I know there's a huge debate in this country, and I think that there are certain things that we have to have reasonable discussion about. Mental health to me is the big one,
Hmm.
because it's not necessarily the guns, it's the mental health problem, especially with some of the disconnected youth. You saw that kid in South Carolina recently go into the church and do that tragedy.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
the kid was crazy. I mean, the
Yeah.
kid was nuts. To
Some
me,
sad
that's
stories.
it's not a gun issue all the time, Richard. To me, I honestly think it's a mental health issue. And then the access to weapons. One of the most violent places on the planet, by the way, is in LA County and also in Chicago. You're from Illinois. You know about the gun violence there.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Um,
do.
I
Yeah, there
saw a
was it
statistic.
was.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna tell a story. Like I was driving through Chicago once. I didn't want to take the tollway because I was kind of cheap, and the surface streets took me through the south side of Chicago at like 11 at night, and that is the scariest drive I have ever been on in my life. I tell you what.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, I got to tell you a story now. I'm the kind of guy that when I go to a city, I like to explore the city. I like to go around. I remember going to Chicago for the first time in my life in about 2008 or 9. I can't remember the exact year. And this is how naive and such a small town country boy I was. I looked up the hotel. I was staying out there by O'Hare, and I looked up the hotel on Google Maps, and it was about a mile and a half. And I thought, you know what? I walk a mile and a half all the time. That's no big deal. I'll just walk. So I'm literally, I'm pulling my suitcase out of the airport, trying to. And by the time you ever heard the phrase "pot committed"? It's a poker
Yeah,
term.
yeah.
Yeah,
You're that. You're
I had
that
enough
then?
money in the pot that I was not going to fold my cards, even though I should have. And there's a road out there. I'm trying to remember the name of the road. It's a big one. Um, no.
Michigan
Out
Ave,
by the
maybe.
airport. It's
That's
like
the big one
Mannheim
in.
or something like that. Yeah.
Oh,
It's
out
like
by the airport.
Mannheim
Okay.
Drive, I
Okay.
think. I can't remember. I'd have to look it up. But anyway, I start going down that, and I went the wrong way towards my hotel. So it ended up being like a 3.5 mile
Oh no.
trek. I finally arrive. I'm exhausted. I actually called a cab eventually, and the cab took me an extra half a mile to the end. By the time I gave up, I actually paid the cab to pick me up, take me a half hour because I was quitting. And the guy looked at me like, "What are you doing?" It's the weirdest thing. Um, that's kind of like a bad trade, right? I mean, you hold on. You should have got
Yeah.
stopped out. You should have had a
Oh,
trading
yeah.
plan to
Yeah.
begin with.
Yeah.
And then you finally capitulate right at the very end. Yeah. But anyway, on that trip,
Yeah.
I rented a car, and I got in that car, and I went down to Michigan Avenue. I wanted to see Soldier Field. I wanted to see the Navy Pier. I wanted to do the touristy stuff. And I wanted to go down to the
Hmm.
what is the museum called there? The Science Museum or something? Aerospace, the Science
think
and
that's right.
Aerospace,
I can't
something
remember.
like that. And I started driving down, Lakeside Drive. And I get to the museum, and it's closed. It was Saturday. I'm like, well, I'll just keep driving. Well, what I didn't realize, because in Utah, when you're on a highway, you stay on a highway pretty much. Okay. um, it
Yeah.
took me right into the heart of South Chicago, and I'm wearing a suit
Oh
jacket
no.
in a rental car. Just baby-faced white kid probably. I look like a complete idiot, and I stopped at like every stoplight. I'm getting hit up by these kids on my window. Hey, can I have some money? Can I have some money? I go to a Walgreens and I park, and I'm kind of trying to act all cool hand Luke, but I was not feeling very, very comfortable. I go into the Walgreens just so that I could try to get directions the hell out of there. I buy like a
Yeah.
portable camera just so I was buying something. That's kind of I guess, a small town thing. If you go into a store, you usually buy something. But there's cop armed at the door. I'd never seen this. I mean, just an armed cop in a Walgreens, and I said, "Hi, officer," and he looks at me, and nods, like, "What are you doing here, dude?" It was.
That's news to get out of. That means get out of there.
Pretty much is what I did. Yeah. Oh, Chicago. I have crazy stories from that trip actually that may not even fit on the podcast. Maybe another time. I'll tell it right now. I haven't thought about this one in years. I was on that because I was going to Chicago to meet students, by the way, and I was going to mentor them on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I don't normally travel to go and mentor my students, but I happened to line two up back to back. I was going to be there for 8 days. And I went on a Saturday because I wanted to go to the Bears game on Sunday. Okay? And I'm sitting at the hotel bar, I think, drinking a beer, asking the bartender, hey, do you know how to get tickets to the game? I didn't buy them. I just want to scalp a ticket. And he's like, well, actually, that guy right there is a ticket broker. So he goes and gets him. His name was Tommy. Oh, my God. This guy was nuts. He came down, he said, and he starts just fast talking me. You know, like one of these street guys that knows how to talk fast, talk smooth, get things done. He's a ticket scalper for all of the venues in Chicago. And he finally says, all right, you got a car, dude? Yeah, I got my license taken away. I'm like, all right. He said, if you'll come out and pick me up from my hotel and take me to the stadium tomorrow, I'll give you a ticket. And that's what happened. I went up and picked him up in the morning. He comes out. He's wearing like this track suit, smoking a cigarette, beer in his hand, 7 in the morning. And we get in the car. He just starts lighting a cigarette up in my car. And I'm like, hey, this is a rental. You can't smoke in here. He's like, oh, man, they don't give a shit. So we get to the stadium, and he changes. He opens his little bag, and he takes his T-shirt off, and he puts on this Devin Hester, big, huge Bears player at the time, NFC Pro Bowl jersey, like this one-of-a-kind. And he puts on football gloves.
What?
He's wearing
Was
gloves.
it cold out or something?
No, like like those sticky gloves that you used to catch.
Oh yeah, the receiver. Yeah, the receiver gloves. Yeah.
So he has like the sticky receiver gloves on, and we're going into the stadium, and he's high-fiving every cop, every security guard. They all know him by name. We get into the stadium. We watch the ball game. Pretty uneventful game. We ended up losing, I think. Seahawks, I believe. But he was nuts, man. He was so funny.
Wow. So you had like tickets to like front row or what, 50-yard line or something or what?
No, scalpers don't keep the good seats. Okay? The thing you got to understand is they sell all of the good seats.
Oh,
if they're going to go into the game,
yeah, makes sense.
They're going into the nosebleeds. We were up at the top. Yeah.
No, but that's pretty sweet. That's a pretty cool story.
Well, yeah, Tommy was he was something. He was quite a dude. Quite a dude. You know, the longer you get to know me, the one thing, and my brother can attest to this, I happen to make friends with some pretty interesting people because I just kind of go with the flow.
Oh, that's cool. I've never. I guess I'm too shy or just too afraid to just talk to people randomly. I don't know what it is. I just never had that drive to do that. I guess I was just always a scared little boy growing up. It's hard to break out of that.
My wife, she calls it permanent bitch face. She she is the sweetest girl, but she thinks that people don't approach her because they think she's mean or something. Because she always has this just like look, uninterested, I guess. I don't know what she thinks it is, but yeah, no. Some people are that way. Some people are not. There are times I'm an introvert. You know, a lot of my favorite things to do are to hang out with my dogs by myself or go up on the mountain or, you know. But I'm a pretty social guy. Phil can tell you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I guess, like, I can be social when I need to be, but it drains me. Like, I need to recharge. I need to get back to my couch and just veg out or, you know, get on my computer and veg out, you know.
Yeah, I think that computer, too, is a decompression engine. You know, one of the things about it, though, is that it's all day long. There are days when I'm trading, and one of the things, you ever seen one of these traders' rooms where they have like 8 monitors?
Oh yeah. It's like, have you ever been in a control room in a refinery? Like, I work in a refinery, so the control room, it's literally 8 consoles with what, a dozen screens at each console, and they're monitoring the process, and they're watching trends and graphs too, and adjusting it. It's very similar to what we do in trading when you're watching the charts or looking at the trends and trying to make adjustments and whatnot. It's pretty cool, and that's basically how I got in. How what interested me with the technical analysis is the numbers and the chart reading and the patterns. It's very similar.
Yeah. Well, if I had 8 monitors in any room, I would never get anything done. I would have Twitter up on one, and I would have Reddit on another one, and I would be reading some probably, Zero Hedge on one, my ESPN Fantasy Football League on another one, Facebook, and then finally two of my monitors would be for trading.
I know what you mean.
It's
I know
so
exactly
easy
what you
to
mean.
get distracted. It's
It is.
crazy. Yeah. So you just mentioned something I want to go with for a minute. So you work in the oil industry. Kind of, for everybody out there, because if you don't work in an industry, everything just kind of seems the same. Fracking, distilling, refining, all of it. I mean, we hear these terms as investors. Kind of explain what you do and what your position in the industry is, and kind of that niche.
Yeah, so in the oil industry, there's actually three segments. There's an upstream, there's a midstream, and there's a downstream. The upstream is what most people talk about and understand is the oil drilling, the Exxons, the BPs, the Shells, and it's all the explorations. So the oil, whenever you hear oil prices, go up, the Exxon makes all the money, but it's their upstream exploration and drilling side that makes all the money. And the midstream is their logistics, their transportation, their oil movements. So shipping it from one location to another, via pipeline or barges or ship. And then the third segment is downstream, which is the area that I work in, and that's the refineries. And they purchase the oil, and they distill it, and they treat it, and they make your finished product, the gasoline and the diesel, and everything in between, your propanes, your butanes, and all the way down to asphalt.
Yeah. So, okay. All right, admission here. I just got distracted. The same thing I was just complaining about people. I missed half of what you just said. I need to shut my because I saw my PowerPoint over here, and I was like, whoa, that font is wrong. I need to change that font. I'm like one of those dogs in the movie.
Oh yeah, that guy.
Squirrel, all right, that one's going. Yeah. Oh, I'm turning that one off. So anyway, say that again for me, please,
Okay.
and I promise I'll listen this time. I was listening the whole time. I was engaged, conversation. Man, I have to admit that one.
That's perfectly understand. I get that too. It's like if I'm not 100% focused, like I'm on conference calls all the time, and if they're not asking, if it's not asking me directly, I just zone out and I'm staring at something else, or trying to do some other work that I've got going on. But yeah, the three segments are upstream, midstream, and downstream. All right, so the upstream is the exploration and drilling, and that's the big companies that you hear about, Exxon and BP, Chevron. Well, no, not Chevron. I don't think Chevron anymore. I can't remember. But those big companies, they earn their money by drilling, exploring and drilling, and getting the oil out of the ground and selling it to all of the downstream side, which is the refiners. So the downstream, they buy the oil, and they make the gasoline, the diesel, the propanes, butanes, and asphalt. And when the oil prices go up, all the money is being made with the upstream side, the Exxon, BP, and the downstream side, like Tesoro and Valero, they make money when oil prices actually go down. And that's why you see Tesoro's doing so well, is because they're Tesoro and Valero, they're the downstream, right? They're the downstream side, and so they make all their money when the oil price is like right now in the 40s and 50s.
Interesting, very, very interesting. Okay, got it. So like there in Houston, you basically you sell West Texas oil, downstream, upstream, all of it. It's a light crude, isn't it?
Yeah. So there's light. They brand oil differently, or they categorize oil. So there's light sweet crude, which is light means you make more of your gasolines and lighter products like propanes and butanes, and then the sweet means sulfur content. So the more, I forget the exact number where they go from sweet to sour, but there's the sour crude is is a higher sulfur content, so that requires more processing to get sulfur out because there's a sulfur specification that the government requires. So we have to remove sulfur from the oil before we can sell it. And then there's also, the light, and then there's a medium, and then there's heavy. And so light crude means it's mostly lighter material, gasoline. Medium is it's still a lot. It still contains a lot of gasoline, but there's more diesel. And then the heavy means there's more asphalt. So, and for a lot of refining, to actually make money, you have to turn that asphalt into gasoline. And there are several dozens of processes that can turn asphalt into gasoline. It's pretty amazing.
Interesting. Here in Utah, we have one of the largest oil deposits in the entire world, actually out in the Uinta Basin. And what it is, and it's also one of the top places in the world for, dinosaur bones and exploration as well. There's something about that region over time that it just kind of produced, and it changed in a way to where there was just tons and tons of oil now, also natural gas. What they call it, and I never really understood why. I mean, I understood the basic concept, but they would call it sticky crude. Is that just the heavier crude? I mean, is that just their name of it? Is it the same thing? What is sticky crude?
I'm not exactly sure what sticky refers to. I'm guessing it's. I really couldn't tell you.
Yeah, well, I know this because it sounds more like the second part that you just described. What they do is they take it from the basin, which is about 3 hours to the east of Salt Lake County, and they put it on, those tankers, and they bring it here. And there's a refinery at the base of the mountain just past downtown going north, and it used to be there's no residential areas around there, but now it's kind of grown towards it. And they refine it there, and then they move it from there. So, and the reason they bring it to Salt Lake is because you're tied to I-80, which goes east and west from San Francisco all the way, I think a long ways into the Midwest, if not further.
Probably goes into Ohio. I think I've seen I-80 in Ohio.
Yeah, I know it goes through Nebraska. I've taken it through there. Probably Missouri. I think we even took 80 to Missouri. Can't remember. It goes a long ways though. Somebody out there in that region will have to let me know, and then I-70, which goes through Colorado and Kansas all the way into Missouri as well. You can tie in, you can get from 15 to 70, and then 15 goes up and down. I mean, 15 goes all the way down to LA. And so you have this shipping place where you can just branch out and go a lot of different places. And from what they told me is that they have a hard time at lower prices. So knowing a lot of the guys out there over the years, people who work in that industry, when oil prices come down, they have a hard time in that region because it's just not profitable to process that type of crude. It sounds like I don't really know the science behind it because I haven't looked into it, but I hear them talk about it all the time.
Yeah, it's sticky. I don't know about sticky, but heavier crudes are definitely more difficult to process because of, I guess we're getting into chemistry now. All the longer carbon chains, it takes a lot of energy to break them apart to make something more valuable. So you have to, the processes are high pressure in the 1,000 psi, high temperature, 800 some degrees Fahrenheit to break these longer carbon chains into smaller ones that we can pump into our tanks.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Yeah. In that region, oil is such a big part of, even just the identity of Texas and Oklahoma. What is the feeling right now with oil dropping? What's the sentiment, the mood, the conversation?
Yeah, it's been changing. You can see it in where I work. You see the news where I think Exxon and BP have laid off 10,000 some people, and Halliburton and Baker Hughes too. There's a lot of people getting laid off in the upstream side. On the downstream, it's not so much. Oil prices being low doesn't affect refining as bad. It's mostly the upstream. But yeah, you do see that. But in Houston, it's not so bad because there's still the medical industry around here is just booming. They can't find enough people.
Mm-hmm.
and then everything that supports the people coming in for medical. All the different restaurants and they're building hotels and houses like there's no tomorrow here.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Texas, I don't know if it's the work ethic, if it's the resources. Seems like the economy there, it goes up and down like some places always do, but it seems like there's a lot of business that gets done in Texas. Do you think it's the people? Do you think it's the government with favorable policy? I mean, you've been there for a little bit. What do you see there?
Yeah, I do think it's the people here. They're very resilient. It seems like they're not. It's hard to bring them down from what I can see. They're all very entrepreneurial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Matt has talked about this all the time. Matt calls Texas his second home, and
yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, he loves it there. I think he would move there in a heartbeat. I don't know if it would be Dallas or Houston or somewhere else. He loves them both equally, but I think that there's a very similar Austin as well. That's right. I think there's a similar mindset in some places like Utah and Texas and Idaho, and and it's not even that mindset doesn't exist in individuals elsewhere, but it's almost cultural. And I don't know if you know much about the history in Utah, but we have libertarian roots from the very beginning, and that is just a healthy distrust of government, a healthy distrust of federal government especially, because the second that Utah got settled, federal government didn't like them, and they had battles back and forth for years, and it took a long time to get statehood for a lot of political reasons, religious reasons. Maybe I can go into a whole podcast on this, but essentially the people who settled Utah never really trusted the government. I think Texas has that same kind of mindset.
Yeah, I think you're right. The big government thing is they're very wary of it. I mean, they did have a story. Was it Rick Perry or one of the senators, the Texas senators? They were saying Obama was sending troops into Texas to take over the state because they were just doing a drill, a standard military drill, but all these conspirators saying they're coming to take over the government. I was like, oh wow.
There was a name for that. We talked about it on the podcast. It was crazy. It was the Jade Helm exercise. There were some of the craziest stories in 2015 are out of Texas. You had that Jade Helm thing, and then you had that biker standoff where like 9 guys died, 170 people got shot, like in some strip mall. They confiscated over 1,500 weapons or something like that.
Whoa, I hadn't heard that one.
That one was nuts. That was just 3 or 4 months ago, I believe. I mean, it's incredible when you think about just the crazy stories. Honestly, this is part of Texas. This is part of who you guys are. I know with the Jade Helm, you're going to have to embrace it if you're going to get along there, by the way. With the Jade Helm thing, I read something online that people in Texas thought Walmarts were being used as military bases, and they were starting to prepare and drill tunnels between Walmarts so that they could ship military weapons back and forth.
People come up with the craziest stories.
Oh my God. Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah, one of these days I'm going to do a whole podcast on Utah history, by the way. I love history. Anybody who ever comes to town for mentoring, one of the things I'd like to do is I like to walk around a little bit. I think of myself as a mentor, and I definitely got to teach them, but I also am a host in my city as well. And so we walk around a little bit, and I kind of explain what the buildings are and kind of the history behind it. It's fascinating when you think about it. And quite frankly, I think that entrepreneurial, hardworking, libertarian mindset comes from deep in our roots, And I think that's probably true in Texas. It's, quite an interesting thing. Well, let me ask you something about politics. That Texas governor, what's his name?
Rick Perry?
Yeah, what's your take on that dude? He's running for president right now, right?
Yeah, I haven't followed him very closely. I think I don't know what I think yet. I haven't studied him enough to know, but it seems like the they're crazy. I don't really have much of an opinion other than I hear things that I don't necessarily want to repeat it because I don't know what's true and what's not.
This is a podcast. I don't know if it's libelous to repeat a rumor or not. Yeah, we probably shouldn't. Oh, goodness. Politicians, I got to tell you. I saw him on the debate last week. There was the Republican primary debate.
I wanted to see that.
He creeped me out a little bit. I don't know. There's something about him I just didn't trust. It's interesting watching politics, too, because same thing with the Democrats and the Republicans. During the primaries, they go far, far to the right or left.
Yeah.
Then whoever comes out of it is going to come right back to the center. All the rhetoric they're spouting right now, they'll all change it. Oh, man, I'll tell you, it's one of those deals I don't necessarily trust. Well, enough about politics. I do want to talk about your trading a little bit. You've had quite a journey here. Let's start with why. Why did you start this journey and your trading career?
See why? For me, it was just to get my time back. I found myself working all the time with my company. They're a great company, don't get me wrong, but I never had time for myself. I never took time for myself. I always focused it on giving them everything that I've got, and making them millions of dollars for year in, year out for the business. And then what do I get out of it? I just get a paycheck. And then my girlfriend at the time, my fiance now, she introduced me to this to Rich Dad Poor Dad. We actually listened to it on a road trip to Louisiana to visit my brother, and that book basically changed my mindset. It's like I don't need to be trading my time for money, for a paycheck. I need to take charge and give my time for myself. That was the big why for me. Is I don't have a whole lot of time. Well, everybody has the same amount of time. I think you say it on the podcast all the time. Is everybody's given the same amount of time? You make do with what you've got, right, and try to get the best out of it, what you can.
Yeah, it is true, and it is something I rant and rail about. I mean, even myself, and part of that is a reminder to me. Tim, do what you can to be productive with your time. And one of the reasons, thank you for sharing your why, by the way, and to try to get more time back. And Rich Dad Poor Dad is quite an inspiring book when you start to really think about it, and what Robert represents and who Robert is. Have you ever had a chance to meet him or talk to him?
No, not yet. I would like to, though.
Very fascinating man, I got to tell you. I mean, I met him for the first time, in 2008, and I've told this story before, so I won't repeat it, but essentially, I stuck my nose right in, I shook his hand, I got to know him, and I've seen him speak. The one thing, he's got a military background, he's his own man, so he's not afraid to drop a few F-bombs on stage, I can tell you that. He's not shy. I've had a few very religious people in my office, and I asked him, "Hey, you ever seen Robert speak?" And a few of them like, "Yeah, it wasn't what I was expecting. It was good, don't get me wrong." And I knew exactly where they're going, but so I kind of pull it out of him. But he is passionate, and the one thing I love about Robert is his passion and his drive. He still produces a radio show. He runs his companies. He's still an entrepreneur. I mean, and these are the kind of people, Richard, that inspire me now, because he doesn't have to do any of that. He doesn't have to do. He can do whatever he wanted to. He wants to build businesses. So then, after your why, you got involved in this. How did you get started with me? I mean, how do you get to the point now today where we're talking? You've taken my classes and things like that. You've gotten to know the community and learned from us. How did you get to that point?
Yeah, actually, it began what I think in just this past February. I was I went to one of those rich dad, workshops where they had the real estate, and then they had a little tag at the end for stock market.
Mm.
And like the real estate interested me. I'm still trying to get into real estate, but the stock market just kind of intrigued me because he was saying, you can make money in all directions of the market. And I was like, really? You can do that?
Hmm.
And then, he kind of put a few, a short little 20-minute presentation of what you can do. And then he said, go to this website and sign up. So I signed up. I did the weeknight webinars or something. Like Matt was teaching it, and
Hmm.
and it was the 2-night thing where it was a Monday, Tuesday. You come back for a couple hours each night, and then after that, I signed up for the courses. So I took the what what are the first courses? I can't remember the name of it now. The options one is one of them, and then the
Yeah.
master trader. Yeah, so I
Master
signed up
trader.
for those. Yeah, master trader and options one. So I signed up for those, took those, and then and uh, got into lab with I think it was Matt's lab at first, and then you took over, and then it switched back and forth between you two.
Yeah, a little bit. Hmm.
Yeah. So I've been in lab, and had Donna Miller as my mentor, and she was great. She showed me a lot of things. I'm actually going to have a meeting with her tomorrow night to
Oh,
talk some
good.
more about this. Yeah, and just listening to you guys every day, and I listened to all of you guys, all the podcasts, like 101 of them. I hadn't listened to 102 yet because that just came out. Uh, but it's listening to everything, getting on tackle trading. I think I've heard of tackle trading through one of the labs. Matt posted a link to it, so I got on, signed up. There's so much information on there. It's amazing what you guys have put together. Really, I I, I can't believe how much information it is, and it's fairly inexpensive too for all that information. To
I,
be
I,
honest with you.
I, I got to tell you, I mean, the whole purpose, thank you for sharing that, by the way, but the whole reason we do tackle trading is to support you guys. I mean, we've been doing this stuff as mentors and coaches and teachers, for a long time. And somebody goes through a class and they don't get all their answers, there's no way you can. You need a
Mhm.
community and support. I think it's pretty amazing that you've listened to every podcast. You've probably seen the journey. I want to start right there for a second, then I'll get back to a few of the other things you said. As you've got listened through the podcast, what have you noticed? Has it changed at all? What have you seen?
Yeah, it's definitely gotten more refined over the I guess 100 podcasts. I mean, you guys still shoot the shit all the time. It was great, and but my favorite ones are the interviews. Steve Wong, Dean Beckett. I think you had Brad May on a couple of weeks ago, and
Hmm.
then you had the forget it. He was the young guy that did the crude options. That was a great story too. I forget his
Oh
name
yeah,
now.
Jake Pelly.
Yeah, Jake Pelly. Yeah,
Yeah.
and even Gino's interview with Gino where he told his story and how he got into it, and so I just love hearing that because it just gives me inspiration to that I can do this too, and it's just awesome that you guys are out there doing this for us.
I think that people need a reminder of stuff like that because, quite frankly, when you're doing it by yourself, you don't know people who have gone through your journey that you're starting.
Hmm.
And having those interviews and those stories and getting different people that were students or mentors or teachers from different backgrounds, I believe that it kind of reinforces the value of what people are doing. Because when you're new and you're still struggling, it can be very frustrating if you don't have that reinforcement. In fact, it
Yes,
might be easier to
definitely.
give up if you don't have a reminder that, okay, yeah, these people did this, and if they can do it, I can do it too.
Definitely. Yeah, it always helps to have that partner, or at least somebody that out there that you can listen to or talk to, and being able to go onto the forums and talk to people, and having a mentor right there, pretty available whenever you need. It's invaluable.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I'm glad. It's pretty awesome to hear it. And you've really taken a lot of our education. You also took the Theta Fade course, which is one of my most proud things we've done so far, because that's taught by one of my students, Steve Wong, who made the Hall of Fame at Rich Dad. And what he did is he put a bunch of video series together to kind of teach his system. Live feedback. I mean, tell me what you thought of the course.
Yeah, that was a great system. When he first showed he just put it on YouTube, the little 5-minute, 10-minute overview of Theta Fade and his weekly results. That got me hooked. I tried it. I put it in paper, and I tried it, and it seemed to work, but I didn't have all the details that he had. And going through that class where he showed the videos of looking at all the, preparing the night before, looking at the market internals, looking at the S&P and the Qs, and making sure that you have the information in front of you so you're ready to move with the market. And then the weekly webinars, it's like that. You can't get any better than that, because he goes over his trades, and then he goes over your trades. If you are willing to share, you can share when your trades, and then he'll go over them. He'll give you feedback, and it was great because then it's live feedback, and I know what I'm doing wrong and what I'm doing right and what I can improve on, and he's just so patient too. He'll answer everything. He'll even go back. He even went back and answered a question that he missed on a previous webinar, and in the week after. So he's very thorough, very patient. I couldn't be happier with the class.
Interesting. I'll tell you, I think a big part of that is just Steve comes with it with the right perspective, which is why I wanted him to learn how to teach. I've been doing this a long time, and not that all of the great traders are also great teachers. It's just true. I can think of one. I won't name his name. Don't want to call him out because he's a great trader. Just happens to not be a great teacher. And I think what it is, it's hard, even with good intentions and patience, it's hard to deliver content and ideas. And one of the things we did with Theta Fade, because Steve had never designed a class, is him and I met every week for months. And basically, I was his project manager. And I said, and we went back to mentor-student role. And it was like we would meet on Wednesday. We had 10 action items, and he reviewed what he was doing. I told him where I was at on getting the product ready and the website ready and all that stuff. And we went through his PowerPoint. I helped him learn to think about how to design the product. I got to tell you, he did an amazing job. I was very, very happy at the end of it. But that patience you just described, that's just Steve's heart. I mean, honestly, it is. It's just who he is. He wants everybody to be happy and learning and understand. And that quality assurance, I believe, happens when you build something that you're proud of. And especially somebody like Steve, where you put your name on something. He's a professional person. He's a successful person, but he's going to take the pride in a product like that. Kind of a weird connection, but I was talking about this with my students who are in town this week. My buddy Terrell, Terry got mad at me because I called him Terry.
Don't call me Terry.
He said, "No, I don't like that." My name's Terrell. Yeah, I guess I used to be like that with Timmy. I didn't like it when people called me Timmy, but anymore I don't care. Call me Timmy. I think it was the South Park thing when they started making fun of it so Timmy. Much. Like, oh my God, Timmy again? Come on. Yeah. But anyway, we were talking today about restaurants and how quality goes down as they expand and get bigger and more popular, and that quality assurance. And I think when it's your product and your idea, you're the chef putting the food on the plate and your name's on the restaurant, you're going to make sure you put something great out. And that's what Steve does with that Theta Fade right now. It's all his baby right there, and I'm glad to hear that. So are you trading Theta Fade now? Are you doing some of those strategies?
I'm taking advantage of it. It's I did it last week. I had to put on a smaller position because I was on a plane for half of the day, and so it was more difficult to manage, but it was still manageable, right? So, but it's definitely working, and like I wish I could do it, more frequently, or be in front of a computer more frequently to do it, Yeah. But I can't. I do what I can, and it's been working great. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the big challenge, isn't it? Is getting the time to trade when you're using strategies like this. And that's when, like I started with the question why, and when is a big question too. Part of systems and part of how you design things is when you can trade. If you can trade during the day on a Friday, that's different than if you can only trade at night. And that's where mentoring comes in, obviously. And I'm so glad to hear that you're reconnecting with your mentor, Donna. Such a great teacher, such a great story as well. I've known Donna a long time. So you kind of you've dove right in, it sounds like. You've taken advantage of everything you can, and you're trying to soak up all the knowledge you can. So what's the goal here for the next year?
The goal for the next year? My ultimate goal is to fire my boss. That's my ultimate goal. And take my time back. And I do think I can do it. I really do. It's just a matter of time. I'm still working out the kinks. I started a lot of theta initially, theta trading, and then I got away from it, and I started trying to directional, and then this last week has killed me. So I need to reassess and go back to what worked.
Yeah. Volatility in the markets this week. I mean, China crashing and oil down again, and markets all over the place. I actually I called the market bottom today, by the way. I was on the phone with Matt, and I said, market's going to go back up. And sure enough, it just turned around. You don't call them every day.
It just took that slow turn and then just worked its way up slowly over the time. I was like, wow, how does that happen?
Yeah. Well, my man, I think we're about ready to wrap this one up, but it's been a true pleasure. I got to tell you, what a conversation. We were all over the board today. I don't mind. Those are my favorite conversations. Yeah. Any last thoughts for new students out there? What advice would you give somebody who's brand new, just barely got registered for their classes the very first time? What advice would you give them?
My advice is, go to class and put your time in. It takes time. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. It's hard. It's not easy, but it will come. It just takes time.
I love it. Couldn't say it better myself. Anything great is worth working for. There's no doubt about it. And the more work you put in early, the smoother that operation becomes later, for sure. You get to the point where you can manage your accounts and your trades in just a few minutes. That is a true thing. It just because once you get to that point where you understand it well enough to where you can just apply your rules, make your decision, and move on, there's a great confidence that comes from that.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, you've been listening to the Trading Justice podcast. Phil, do we got any promo codes or anything? We good? Yeah. We are going to be wrapping up here today. We do have a special cash flow club coming up here the 20th of August. I believe we'll be announcing that over at Tackle Trading soon. As always, get in the game. If you're not registered for Tackle Trading, get over there and get signed up. We accept all kinds. In fact, we like a very eclectic group of all backgrounds. Just be ready to participate. Even if that participation is just reading and listening and maybe the occasional question, I got to tell you, we love new traders, because that's what we all were at some point, and we remember that, and so we're there to help you. Richard, again, thank you for being here. Much appreciated, and we are out. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you. That was great.
You've been listening to the Trading Justice podcast. If you've enjoyed yourself and think that the conversations and topics we've covered are important, help spread the word. Give us your feedback. 5 stars on iTunes, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter. The Trading Justice podcast is proudly sponsored by TackleTrading.com. Get off the sidelines and get in the game.